Good evening and welcome to the Drive at IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a great show planned for you today. But first, the forecast from our IntellectualRadio.com Weather Center. Ugh, that's the only thing I can describe it. Cloudy, breezy, cold, with an occasional snow. Depends on where you are, 1 to 3 inches. In other areas, total 3 to 6 inches. The roadways are treacherous, will be slippery and dangerous, so be careful out there. High 31 degrees and dipping because tonight, clear, cold. It might be a wind chill advisory. Please consider covering exposed skin because if you're out there more than 15 minutes, you will get frostbite. The low will be 12 and dropping like a rock degrees. Tomorrow, sunshine. Wind chill advisory again might be in effect, and make sure again you cover up your skin. High 23 degrees tomorrow night. Very dangerous cold. The hawk is out and he's in effect, so cover up again, and it will be might be a wind chill advisory. The temperature will be 14 degrees, but it expect to dip to below zero. Wednesday, cloudy and very cold again. A wind chill advisory again might be in effect. 30 degrees, but it expects to dip. Thursday, partly sunny and a little bit warmer. High 34 degrees, and Friday, sunny and cold. High 37 degrees. The weekend, Saturday, sunny and a bit warm. High 38 degrees. Sunday, cloudy with a chance of showers and warm. High 41 degrees. To drive at 5 is part of the new Monday night lineup with Becoming Dateable at 11 a.m., Battle Talk Radio at noon, One Sister to Another at 4 p.m., Warrior Talk Radio at 6 p.m., New Black Leadership Coalition at 7 p.m., Entrepreneurs at 8 p.m., and the Chronicles of Ron at 9 p.m. The Drive at 5 is also part of the fabulous 5 at 5 only on intellectualradio.com. Tonight, my guest is the founder of Viable. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
To assist entrepreneurs, please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Sherrod Jones. Welcome to the Drive.
Hey, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
No problem. Please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Great. So, background. I don't know how far we want to go, but I'll go back a couple of years, right before I founded Viable. So, I used to work in corporate as a training and education executive. And so what I used to do was to develop learning programs and personnel certification programs globally. And so I transitioned out of that, and it got to a point where I really felt one only man of color in my business, and it just kind of got to a point where I felt just overwhelmed with everything that I was doing in that place. You know, you hear you got to work twice as hard to get half as far, and I had gotten pretty far, so that means I worked like super hard, and so I had gotten kind of tired and decided I wanted to transition and do something different, new business. And so I'd attempted to launch an app development business, failed miserably. And so what I learned at that point is that as an entrepreneur, you need to learn what you don't know. And at that point, I had not known that. And so I leaned back on my experience as a learning creator, as a teacher, and as an educator, and started to build Viable. And what the thing about Viable was establishing an organized process to get a person from point A to point B, with what I call performance objectives. And that's what comes from my background, is in identifying the gap between what you need to know and what you don't know, and kind of creating a very clear process to getting there. And so that became the basis for what Viable has become.
So that describes your organization in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell. So Viable essentially helps you get from point zero to launch as an entrepreneur. And we focus on helping you to develop your concept, to evaluate, to validate your concept, and then to launch it.
So why is it important for aspiring entrepreneurs to seek assistance from an organization such as your business?
Well, as I said, primarily it's because you don't know what you don't know. A lot of times as an entrepreneur, there is a whole world that you're entering into that you're not familiar with. And it's not just from a process standpoint when you're talking about managing a business or administering a business. It starts at the very beginning where you're coming up with an idea for what a potentially good business could be. And a lot of times, people don't understand that you don't just start with, hey, I think I got a good idea for a business. What you start with is, hey, what problems need to be solved in the world that I'm fit to solve? And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs don't start from that perspective. A lot of times they start from the perspective of, oh, this looks like this could make money, or this is a new wave. Let me jump on this. This is an opportunity, and not really aligning who they are with what they could bring to the world in terms of a solution. And so I think the first thing that you need to know is, what you don't know and how you engage that.
I'm glad you brought that up because let's play devil's advocate. I
Right.
know people cringe when I say that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate with you.
Okay.
Let's say I'm an aspiring entrepreneur. That's what I want to become.
Right.
An entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anybody else.
Right.
So let's say I'm an Earl Winfrey.
Mm-hmm.
I have IntellectualRadio.com.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to work for Channel 5. I don't want to work for WGN, none of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I should do as an entrepreneur.
The first thing you should do as an entrepreneur is to identify what problem you're going to solve, who you're going to solve it for, and how you're going to solve it. Right. And so when we talk about a problem, it's most people either want you to relieve pain or to give them pleasure. Right. That's the solving of a problem. And you have the unique capacity to solve specific problems based on your background, your experience, your skills, your passion, and your gifts. And so I want you to start with that and to identify where in a small space are you the person that is more qualified than 90% of the people there. And once you identify what that space is, then you can figure out what problem you can solve in that space, or what pleasure you can bring in that space, or what pain you can relieve in that space.
Okay, you see a lot of pop-ups. You see a lot of these stores. If she can do it,
Mm-hmm.
I can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm better. I got a lot of friends.
Right.
You say?
I say, who are you helping and what are you changing? I think by and large, when you look at a successful enterprise, a lot of times it starts off as something that the founder themselves realized that they needed or that they can use. And then they realized that there was a way for them to bring that to market with the resources that they had. And so when you're looking at what other people are doing, that's the wrong place to start. The first place to start is, what can you do? And who are the people that you care about? What are the issues that you care about? And where is your unique ability going to be best used? So a lot of times that's where businesses fail. I've seen a lot of times, a lot of people want to start clothing companies, and you want to have a brand related to fashion or something like that because you've seen us do it. And that's not necessarily how it works. There are some people who actually have passion for this, and they have a very unique product. And so what I would tell you, if you decided that you just absolutely had to go into fashion, then I would tell you to be very narrow about your target, because anybody that you ask and you say, well, who's your product for? And they say for everybody, they haven't done enough research and they haven't narrowed enough to where they could target a very specific person with a very specific story. And so what you have to be able to do is to know who the specific person with the specific story is that you can speak to, that they understand your language, you understand their struggle, you understand their need, and you're providing to them what it is exactly that they're looking for. So again, like t-shirt company, right? Focus on people who like pink t-shirts and only sell pink t-shirts. Try that versus, I'm gonna sell something for everybody. I want you to focus on a niche, and that's one of my key words that I bring to the table every time is your niche. Focus on that.
You talk about that. Your niche.
Right.
Okay. So with your niche, Is it important to do a test run before you get your business license to build your clientele?
Absolutely.
Why is it important? Because a lot of people say, you know what? I got a whole bunch of people on my Facebook. I got 5,000 followers that follow me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know whenever I say something, they gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important to do a test run before you get a business license versus going all out there?
Because you have to test that assumption, and that's what business is about. That's what startups are about. Is you have an idea, you have a hypothesis, and you test it. And so that's why, remember, in the earlier days of Facebook, things would just change for no reason. Like one day you look on Facebook and all of a sudden everything's green or something like that, and then 2 days later it's back to normal. They were getting information, and they were seeing how people felt about the change. They were seeing if people liked it, if people disliked it, if they interacted more, if they interacted less. They gathered information. And so what you have to do as an aspiring entrepreneur, as someone who wants to go into the realm of solving a new problem, is to find out if your assumptions are correct. Do the people you think want this really want it? And so if so, that means they'll buy it, or they'll engage with it in a way that makes sense and can give you feedback. So before you bet the farm, test it. And so I think it's critical for you to get information from the people that you want to be your customers.
Most first time entrepreneurs have a lack of information on grants and TIF money to assist them in their business. How an entrepreneur can get access to information and share it among the masses?
Right. Well, there are a lot of people, uh, neighborhood-based agencies who really focus on helping entrepreneurs through different steps, and who really focus on things like funding and focus on access to economic opportunity. So you have small business development centers, especially across Chicago, and really across the state, because there's the business uh, small business center. There's a whole federal government pool of money that's dedicated to developing small businesses, and they have a lot of resources, and they fund various agencies, whether it's SCORE
But is
Chicago.
it possible? It's like who you know. A lot of people say it's who you know. I always say you can know this person. That doesn't mean they're gonna give it to you.
Yeah,
How
no.
how does that, I mean, am I right?
Right.
But it's kind of like I know you.
Right.
You have $100. Are you
Right.
gonna give me that $100? That
If you give me
means
a good reason to.
the, what I'm getting at is a lot of people, especially when it comes to Black entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
lack of information, lack of sharing with one another.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, I have this gold mine
Hmm.
of information.
Hmm.
I'm milking it, baby.
Hmm.
But here you come, Mr. Niche.
Right.
You gonna try to steal my nah. So how do we get away from that and start sharing with other entrepreneurs? Because it's critical, because like it or not, we're getting to the point that even though we're up there with entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
our money is still funneling to white organizations.
Hmm. Well, I think first thing, what you pointed out is the critical issue, thinking that there's a competition, and there's not. The strategy has to be to make the whole pie bigger instead of fighting over slices, because I think we've been taught that there are only limited resources and we have to fight over the limited resources. But if we change the way that we view our strategic objectives and say, okay, as opposed to everyone fighting over this limited resource, let's expand the pool of resources and figure out how we can get the most of it. For example, what I see a lot, especially if you talk about minority owned businesses going after contracts with the city or with the state, um, people will rather go after contracts individually as opposed to pooling resources with 4 or 5 other agencies to make themselves competitive. And I think that what we have to realize is we have to work together in order to make ourselves competitive. Again, if we talk about
There are
space.
some people, and sorry to cut you off,
Mhm.
I don't want to work with you. Why should I work with you? Nobody, I mean,
I think
I want the percentage from myself. I have mouths to feed.
My thought is this: I would rather have 60% of something than 100% of nothing. More often than not, people overestimate their ability to do things on their own, and they underestimate the value of cooperation. And I think just on a cultural level, that has to change with the understanding that you can't do anything by yourself. And the one man against the world winning it all is really an American myth. It doesn't really exist. Even when we look at the most successful people have had teams. The most successful people have had people surrounding them that ensured their success. But when you buy into this pull up by your bootstraps mythology, then you start to think that you can go against everything by yourself and you can go and get it all by yourself for yourself, and it's false. And none if you look at every story and really peel back the layers, there isn't a single person who did everything by themselves.
I remember this philosophy a couple of like weeks ago. Someone said the exact same philosophy,
Mm,
saying that African Americans need to pull up their
mm,
bootstraps and
mm,
get to work. And
mm,
I told them that Dr. King
mm,
said, well, first you got to provide me food
right,
in order to pull it up. And
right,
if I don't have the boot, how can I pull it up?
right, right.
So what I'm saying is, how can we get the boot so
Hmm.
we can pull it up?
I think what has to happen is a cooperative understanding that we all need the boot, and that you, with your resources by yourself, you don't have enough to get the boot. But if five of us, we can get a boot, and then we can turn that boot into, then we can get the saddle, then we can get the horse, then we can get on the horse, and then we can go somewhere. Right. And so I think what has to happen is to recognize that there isn't the concept of the man, with the quotes, like everybody wants to be the man. That person doesn't exist. Like what really exists is a vision, that if we can all pull together behind a vision and recognize that there's value in getting to a shared space of success and accomplishment, that's what's going to matter more so than any single individual becoming, I don't want to say famous, but becoming big or something like that.
But some people view the man as a white man.
Hmm.
I mean, the man, the white,
Right,
the white man.
right.
So do you think that sometimes entrepreneurs are competing against whites?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the fundamental concept of economics is that there isn't enough for everybody. And so it's based upon competition over cooperation. But when you look at how cultures get built, how countries get built, it's a function of cooperation. And the people who really succeed employ cooperation in order to make it to where they want to go. And competition happens kind of at the lower levels more so than at the higher levels. Just even if you look at these large organizations that, let's take for example, I just happen to see the NFL is outside on the TV right now. You look at the NFL and they talk about how the entire NFL colluded to keep Colin Kaepernick out, right? Because of whatever they perceived as the value of keeping him from employment, as opposed to the value of the NFL brand and what the NFL wanted to accomplish. So they determined that their group objectives was more important than any one team saying, hey, I could have a great quarterback. They said, hey, we have something that we need to say. We have a position that we want to maintain. Let's maintain that position together, as opposed to any one person saying, oh, okay, I ascribe value to having a winning team based on this guy.
True. Let's say I have a t-shirt company,
Right.
which you just mentioned, and a lot of people venturing out to catering company. Besides the first thing you have mentioned, what will be the other most important thing an entrepreneur should do, however they neglect to do?
First thing that you should do, that you neglect to do, um, have a plan. Now, I'm not saying a business plan that's 30 pages, 40 pages. You can write a business plan on a sheet of paper, called using a model called a business model canvas, where you effectively outline, okay, who are my customers going to be? What's my value proposition going to be? What channels am I going to use to sell? How am I going to measure success? Who am I going to partner with? How am I going to know if I'm doing well? And so if you outline these things and give yourself guidelines for how to move, then that gives you a good starting point. So at the very least, goals and to understand that you need something to measure yourself against. And you also need to know when it's time to pull back completely, when it's time to pivot and kind of change the direction a little bit because you see something is going in a particular direction, or when it's time to go full out in the direction that you're going. And so I think having those guideposts help you to make those decisions.
Again, I'm in business.
Right.
In business, there's always a slow period.
Mm-hmm.
How can a business survive during a slow period? Let's say it's the Christmas season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the t-shirt business.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's not going to wear
Nobody buying
t-shirts.
in the
You're in
wintertime.
Chicago, right?
Right.
So then I want to invest in hoodies.
Mm-hmm.
So then the summer hits.
Right.
Then the hoodie season is over.
Right.
There's the slow period. What an entrepreneur should do, like catering season. This is their catering season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when the spring hits, nobody's like cooking, or
Mm-hmm.
people just want to go to the restaurant, or people just basically want to start cooking
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So what would you recommend the slow period?
For the slow period, I would recommend that you prepared for it and knew that it was coming. And as such, you governed your expenses based on the understanding that the slow period was going to come, and that you made plans for also alternate income based on what it is that you do. I have learned that a single stream of revenue is not sufficient to get everyone to the level of success that they imagine. And so I think that you should have parallel lines of income so that you aren't only relying on a single thing as your source. So I believe that you should cultivate things that are in alignment with what it is that you're doing, whether let's say it was catering. So if you do catering, maybe in off seasons, maybe you start working on a cookbook. Because I mean, you're so good and people like buying your stuff. Maybe they want to be able to make what you make at home. So another line of income is a cookbook that you sell. Maybe you teach classes. So maybe you don't want to buy my food. Maybe you want to cook like me. I'm gonna teach a class twice a month. And so what you want to do is to start again, you started with your niche, but then what you did was start to expand and to incorporate other channels and other means of income that surrounded that niche and still stayed inside of your area of expertise, where again, you're better than 90% of the people that do it.
Most Black businesses have higher prices than other businesses. Most of the time, Black entrepreneurs do not have a hold on the markets, as what we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How can entrepreneurs get a hold of the markets in business? We had a discussion earlier in regards to everybody being separate. If everybody comes to a whole when you talk about contracts,
Mm-hmm.
can beauty shops, beauticians, nail shops, can they work together and get a hold of the market just like the Koreans?
I think so. I think,
But how can they do that?
how could they do that? I think
Yeah.
the first thing that you have to do is to pull people to the table and have a conversation. This goes back to my expertise and what I was doing when I was developing programs. What you have to do is to identify your stakeholders, right? And again, this is part of the process that I employ with entrepreneurs. When you talk about stakeholders are everybody that's impacted by the fact that you exist, right? So everybody that's impacted by the fact that the line exists, that's going to be your customers directly. That's the first person that you think of. Next are the people who you buy supplies from. Next are the people who buy services for your customer. So let's say your customer is primarily a Black woman. Maybe her man might be sending her to the shop, or somebody. So these are all people who, because you exist, their lives are impacted. You to the table. and you find out from them what is it that they need the most. And you figure out how to get whatever it is that they need the most to them consistently. And you create essentially a standard for that. And then what you would do is to say, okay, everybody in this beauty salon consortium meets this standard. All of us do this. So you will know anytime you go to any one of us, this is the level of quality that you're going to get. These are the materials that we're going to use. This is the sanitation that we're going to use. These are the practices that we're going to use of hygiene, of, whatever that are going to ensure that there's a level of quality that you can rely on. And we all do. Now we all benefit from that because now we've set ourselves apart from everybody who's not part of the consortium. So now there's 20 of us who, every time you go in there, it's worth it to pay for a 20% premium of what everybody else is charging because of the value that you are assured that you're going to get. And that ties back to, almost like unionizing, but at the very least, organizing to establish a standard. So when you establish a standard, you can charge for a standard because a standard brings value. And going back to your point early on about, what we charge and what the market is, people pay for what they value. And if you can assure quality, then that's a value that I can charge for.
In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, at times, in my opinion, blacks don't value other blacks. The reason is because a Korean can charge the same price as a black nail shop, but they will go to a Korean. The reason I'm using that is because it was a big brouhaha on prices with nail shops.
Okay.
Prices with getting their hair done, or prices, but they can go way to Montezuma somewhere to get their hair done. But when it comes to nails, they can go somewhere just local or something like that. So my question is, how can we motivate each other to get together and say the importance of buying black and the importance of unionize, as you put it, and going for these adventures, through these adventures?
I think the key is being able to articulate what's the value. And so a lot of times people will look at value just simply in terms of price, right? Like, this is $30 versus this is $40. I'm gonna pay $30. And that's it, and that's all. And that's the only choice that they made, was based purely on price without whatever's behind the price, right? And so if you can validate, okay, this is why this costs this much, and this is why it's worth it to pay more to purchase from a black-owned business. If you can draw the line between the value that this black-owned business brings back to your community directly versus being able to map how the money that goes to, let's say, a Korean, as you mentioned, a Korean salon goes out of the community. And so if we can identify and map the fact that because you put this money into a black business, it stayed in your community this much longer, and it touched people in this community more so than when you put it in a Korean business and it left the community immediately. I think a fundamental understanding of economics and a fundamental understanding of powernomics is going to be useful to build the base for people to understand why it matters. And so once you start tying the longevity of the black community into economic conversations about buying black, then people can start to understand. When you start to say, okay, look at Black Wall Street in Tulsa and say, this is how they built that, and say, we can build that again. This is where we start. But I think what has to happen is there has to be a vision for it, and there has to be people who are willing to work together to move towards that vision. And so it always starts, small in an enclave. It might be one or two people say, hey, let's do this together, and then it grows. But it has to start with people who are willing to say, let's work together to build something of value. But Let's then be able to articulate that value. So it's clearly the most important element is being able to explain to people why it's important.
You have a workshop that's coming up.
I do have a workshop that's coming up.
Briefly explain your workshop and,
Absolutely.
and how people can get involved and get in contact with you.
Absolutely. So I have a workshop coming up this Saturday, actually. I call it From Wish to Pitch. So I came up with that idea because probably a little bit over a year ago, I had done a pitch competition with the Chicago Urban League. I won. And what I wanted to do was to walk people through that process. I went from hardly having any idea at all to being able to flesh out an idea that was actually not only a good business idea, but could win a pitch competition. Right. And so I said, well, you know what? I can walk you guys through 7 discrete steps that'll take you from you don't have an idea at all to you walking out of here with 2 to 3 viable business ideas that you're ready to start to test and that you're ready to start to validate to find out, okay, what's my next step in creating a business model for this? What's my next step in coming to the market with a minimum viable product? What's my next step in acquiring customers and developing revenue? And so that's coming up this Saturday. It's a full day workshop. I've already pilot tested it. It went very well the first time I did it. So now I expanded it to a full day because it was so much information. I had done it in a half day. People said we need a whole day and we need pre-homework. So that's what I did. So I expanded it into a full day, gave them pre-homework. And if you want, just go to Eventbrite and you can type in Viable, VYYABLE, and then the event will come up. Also, you can follow me on Facebook. Again, I'm at Viable, VYYABLE on Facebook as well as Instagram. And you can just follow me. And on my website, or rather through those platforms, I like to give information. I like to have conversations similar to this, just to give people things to think about and concrete steps that they can take to move into entrepreneurship.
All right. To be continued. Don't be a stranger.
Man, I love it.
On a drive at 5.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and your flyer and stuff will be posted on our sister Facebook page.
Beautiful.
Black Products and Black Services, which will connect you to after the end of the show.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
To Earl Winfrey, our executive producer.
Thanks, Earl. Yeah. Much appreciation. Thanks,
when we
Roman.
come back on the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station, Chicago's very own hip hop artist 773 will be joining us and performing live after this. And we're back on the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station. My guests, come on in here, guys. I'm sorry. We have the one and only 773.
Very good, sir. Yes, sir.
The one and only Kevin
Yes, sir.
Willie, right?
That is
Okay. And Khalid Reed, aka 773.
Yes, sir.
So give us a little background of 773. Go ahead.
Well, 773 is obviously Chicago-based. We got it from the area code, which actually came out the year we were born. It's crazy enough. We had a collective of music. He was more so the rapper. I was more so the melody. We kind of fused it together, and it became both of our driving passions.
We both came together and just, we had different backgrounds, but we were able to mesh it. Kind of represent Chicago in a different light.
And tell a story.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting reading your bio. You said it's not a trend, it's a movement. Can you guys just explain that a little bit?
That first line is really just more so. We're not a phase. We're not. We are here to stamp our name into Chicago's history, basically. And by us naming ourselves 773, we really just wanted people to reflect what Chicago means to them.
Yes, sir.
So what's the inspiration to your single, to your songs? What's the inspiration to it?
Well, most of our inspiration comes pretty naturally. It comes off of feeling. So however we feel around whatever time it is, if I feel like I want to be a rock star, I'm going to say I want to be a rock star. If the message is for someone to stay down while I'm going through a time of trouble, knowing that I shall see the light at the end of the tunnel, then that's exactly what I'm going to say. So it's exactly what comes to the heart.
Okay, so we're going to let you guys perform. I'm going to get out of here. Performing live on the IntellectualRadio.com soundstage is 773.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna be a rock star someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away. So far away. I'm gonna be a rock star someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away. So far away. Hey. It started when I was young. I taught myself to sing. I eventually fell in love with the attention it brings. More and more as I grew, I started to silence myself, thinking this gift I was given was one I had to protect. No one could tell me I suck, no one could tell me nothing. But imagine having to call up a friend, knowing you crushing. Still I would come up with these melodies that be the light within a dark like ebony. Sub D starts off the bench, no more second strings. I plan to James Harden travel, a referee, selling out arenas from Mexico out to Italy. I plan to have a home in every city that I'm visiting. Give me 1 million stamps on every single passport needed for me to be the top streaming with the most tours. Seems far-fetched and I don't blame you for doubt. It's only when you put in work that everything works out. I'm gonna be a rock star someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away. So far away. I'm gonna be a rock star someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away. So far away. Ay, ay.
Hey. 773. Yeah. Look. I'm standing within the canopy where he planted me. Surrounded by empty wishes, journals, and candid dreams. I frantically avoid masses of man it seems. Reaping the fruits from the roots of my family tree. I'll relinquish any delinquent mindsets that are left in that of a genius. The scenic route seems to be on the road less traveled, so trailblazing don't exist in places I used to frequent. Part of my jest, I'm trying to subdue my passive aggression. Dreams kept me up just because my past is aggressive. Word to the haters, blessed with attention spans of detectives. I just neglect the axis of passes and lack a message, so I ceased to be where I was, who I was. I kept it going cause I knew I could. I kept growing cause I knew I would. Stay humble, but I became war ready when life drew my blood.
Someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away. so far away. I'm gonna be a rock star someday. For my dreams I cannot stay. I'm gonna go so far away, so far away. Ay, ay.
And that was Rockstar.
We'll be back with more. IntellectualRadio.com from the Intellectual Soundstage after this.
Hey. Don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it gets hard, but say you will stand by me when you're lost to find me. And in the dark, you'll be out of light. I ain't got all the answers for you right now, but I pray every day you awake, your foundation stays strong like that makeup stays on. Just tell me you gon' ride when the tires completely bald and the gas completely gone. I'm just gon' sprint down the sprint, cause it seems like my ring, but you ain't heard no voicemails, or you ain't seen no jobs calling my phone. Customer service is gonna throw me on hold, or say the manager's on break, but I ain't gonna say for how long. Sick of this like diarrhea when it hit. We get blamed for being poor without the tools to get rich. Schools are underfunded. Unemployment just seems redundant, and due to the bloody lack of judgment, law enforcement's no longer wanted. So tell me, what am I to do? I could have a lot of you. I could go back to old ways, cause these bills are overdue. But you said give up the streets. This time I had to choose, so I'm doing it just for you, cause you something I can't lose. Don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it gets hard, but say you will stand by me when you're lost to find me. And in the dark, you be out of light that I need. Don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it gets hard, but say you will say you when you're lost to say you find. In the dark, you be out of light that I need.
You can't hide the good times without the bad ones. I feel your grip loosening daily. The looks of disbelief when I say that I'm dream chasing. Faith wavers, you stay down for so long. I ain't mad, I know you contemplating, but I don't know what's about to happen next, or what path is which, or what car is the best, and how much gas it takes to get to the other side of the white picket fence. Never wanted one, but they say it represents happiness, chasing the mirage of what's perfect, swerving through accidents. Play different roles just to navigate Miss America, never finding that one true passion that you've been lacking in. Suits for interviews, you let your shoes speak for you, forced to bet it all on the next shot, going towards the basket. That's the fastest way to fortune. When you find it, will it last you, girl? This ain't nothing new. And what I'm putting you through ain't gonna amount to the mountains that I'll be moving for you. Just stay down.
Hey, don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it's hard, but say you will stand by me when you're lost to find me. And in the dark, you'll be all the light that I need. Don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it's hard, but say you will say you when you're lost to find me. And in the dark, you'll be all the light that I need. Be the light, be the light. Be the light, be the light, and be all that I need. Say you'll find, stand by me. I'm gonna be a rock star.
Been out there doing this. Are you guys appreciating the vibes you guys getting?
Oh man, loving it. Every day is something new. So every comment, every like, every subscription, every share, everything we do, it feels great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what you want your fans to know about your music the most?
Well, for me,
Difficult question. I'm sorry.
no, it's just when you're in a group, it's two things can be said. But what I would want our fans to take away from our music the most is that it's genuine. When things are genuine, it's usually hard to die. You know what I'm saying? And that goes back to that it's a movement, not a trend. Exactly what you hear can live on through other people's experiences. Exactly how we feel is exactly how someone else can feel. And hopefully we get to broadcast it in Madison Square Garden one day or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And
so where they can get your music, how they can get a hold of you, stuff like that.
Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. It's literally everywhere. everywhere. I just have to go on Google, search 773. And it's funny because we pop up, which is still crazy to us, but you can find it anywhere.
And you spell 773, not to cut you off. 773 is SVN
One word.
One more time.
SVN Yes, the SVN is twice, so SVN.
All right. Surprise for you guys. For you guys being on the Drive at 5, performing on the Intellectual Sound stage. Whatever you guys do or something like that, to promote your music and stuff like that as well. You guys will be featured on the Black page, Black Products, Black Services, courtesy of Intellectual Radio. So whenever you want to advertise your music, we'll hook you up on it.
We appreciate that.
Okay. So that's going to do it for us on the Drive at 5. IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda, who's behind the scenes. You guys have a wonderful week. Thanks to 773. Give it up.
You're lost to find me, and in the dark you'll be out of light. I ain't got all the answers for you right now, but I pray every day you awake, your foundation stays strong like that makeup stays on. Just tell me you gon' ride when the tire's completely bald and the gas completely gone. I'm just gon' sprint down the sprint, cause it seems like my little ring, but you ain't heard no voicemails, or you ain't seen no jobs calling my phone. Customer service is gon' throw me on hold, or say the manager's on break, but ain't gon' say for how long. Sick of this like diarrhea, when it hit, we get blamed for being poor without the tools to get rich. Schools are underfunded, unemployment just seems redundant, and due to the bloody lack of judgment, law enforcement's no longer wanted. So tell me, what am I to do? How could I ever lie to you? I could go back to old ways, cause these bills are overdue, but you said give up the streets. This time I had to choose, so I'm doing it just for you, cause you something I can't lose. Don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it gets hard, but say you will stand by me when you're lost to find me, and in the dark you'll be out of light that I don't switch on me, cause I got big plans. I know it gets hard, but say you will stand by me when you're lost to find me, and in the dark you'll be out of light that I.
You can't hide the good times without the bad ones. No. I feel your grip loosening daily. The looks of disbelief when I say that I'm dream chasing. Faith wavers, you stay down for so long.